Get ready for a deep dive into Jimmy Kimmel's suspension and the political identity of Charlie Kirk's assassin. Conservatives torn over free speech crackdowns after Kirk's death. Murals in New York sparked debate over art versus advertising. New research says the benefits of sunlight may outweigh the risks. And the collapse of broadcast television accelerates under political and financial pressure. And I should say, not only broadcast, but cable television as well. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Hi, and thanks for joining me today. Today is September 20th, Saturday, 2025. Let's check in on yesterday's market vitals. S&P 500 closed at 6,664.36. That's up 0.5%, 25-year annual rate of return, 7.33% for the S&P 500. The NASDAQ Composite closed at 22,631.48, up 0.70%. The 25 annual or average annual return is 9.68%. That's right, close to 10%. If you invested. I do start off the show that way because I am a big believer in thinking long-term. That's a part of our message here. If you're new to the show, this is Filtered with TJ Walker. We look at the top, typically 5 stories of the day, and then analyze these stories, business stories, technology stories, culture stories, analyze it through the lens of communication skills, as well as personal development skills. So that is what we're all about right here. Thanks so much for joining me. We're going to dive right in just a second. Hey, if you're enjoying this kind of take and want to hear more stories filtered through the lens of communication, make sure you're following the show, whether you're watching or listening. New episodes drop every single day. And if there's a little notification option where you are now, go ahead and turn it on. It helps you stay in the loop. Okay, it's time for a deep dive into Jimmy Kimmel's quote that got him suspended or fired, and the assassin's influences. The exact line, people forget about this, they don't really look at it. The exact line that got Jimmy Kimmel suspended was this, quote, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it." That is the quote. And I want to spend a little time here dissecting this, analyzing it in a fair, objective way. I'm here as a sensible centrist, coming to you, giving you analysis based on my 40 years of experience working with business executives, CEOs, billionaire fund managers, as well as politicians, celebrities, and star athletes on how to communicate effectively. And crisis communication. Definitely Jimmy Kimmel is in a crisis. So I want to analyze this in a little more detail. Again, the quote was considered so inflammatory, so incendiary, it didn't warrant a mere criticism, a mere apology, but the head of the FCC basically so much has said, ABC, you got to get rid of him. We can do this the hard way or the easy way. And then other station owners that owned ABC stations that carried the station weighed in and said, unless you get rid of this guy, we're not going to air the show. So it was not, to clarify, official censorship where the government said, you must take him off the air today or we take away your licenses and you're out of business. But there was a lot of overt pressure. Let's analyze the quote again and figure out what exactly he did wrong. Where was he factually inaccurate? Where was he beyond the pale? Because typically you don't lose your job for being a little sloppy or hurting someone's feelings a little bit. That's not how professional comedians typically lose their job. So I want to be fair, and I'm really going to give you ammunition if you believe that Charlie Kirk's assassin was completely animated by a left-wing ideology. I'm going to be fair and give you all the points for you to make your case. If you happen to believe he was a product of MAGA culture, I'm going to go through all those points. But I'm going to present a third perspective for you that I hope we all can think about a little more as well. So he said, again, we hit some new lows over the weekend. I don't know how you can fault someone for that. A lot of people were down. A lot of people were feeling like many political operatives across the spectrum were doing sleazy, cheesy things, trying to make hay over someone's death. At that point, there's no particular ideological focus. I don't think you can fault him for that sentence. We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize the kid. Okay. So you might not like the fact that he wanted to point a finger at the MAGA gang, but let's be clear. He was not attacking Charlie Kirk. Not that I think, or any fair-minded person thinks any comedian shouldn't be allowed to attack people. But he wasn't attacking Charlie Kirk. He wasn't attacking Charlie Kirk's family. He wasn't celebrating the death or the assassination of someone in our culture. So we need to take all those things off. I think a lot of fair-minded people could say, all right, someone with millions in audience being paid $16 million a year should not celebrate the assassination of someone. If he had done that, I think there would be widespread agreement that he should have been sacked. But that's not what he said. Again, we've hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize the kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them. Let's just analyze that. Was it in fact true that gigantic swaths of the internet following the assassination of Charlie Kirk were devoted to painting the assassin as a product of the radical left? Well, yes, there was. There's simply no disputing that fact. You can agree or disagree with the analysis or whether the facts merit that assessment, and I'm going to go through the facts in a moment. And I'm going to play it straight and give you all the facts on every side to make the case that this guy was far left, far right, and something in between or neither. I'm going to give you those facts right here today. But what you can't do is say that Jimmy Kimmel was wrong in saying people on the MAGA race. Again, now he's talking about political actors, political characters. He's not talking about Charlie Kirk. He's certainly not embracing or endorsing assassination. He was simply saying that many MAGA supporters were trying desperately. That was his judgment call, but certainly there was a lot of passion and action actively trying to portray the killer of Charlie Kirk as being a part of the political left. Now, I'm going to delve into that very deeply here in a moment, but that's what Jimmy Kimmel said. So far, there's nothing that could be honestly construed as attacking Charlie Kirk or his family or endorsing violence in any way. And we're almost at the end of the quote. So again, we hit some new, and I'm sorry if this seems pedantic, but everybody I see in the media talking about this quote don't really reference it. They don't really stop and say, oh, here's the exact thing that Jimmy Kimmel said, which all fair-minded people could agree upon is clear justification for being fired. So again, the quote, we have hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. were there people on the MAGA right trying to say, okay, here is this killer, and he's 100% associated with left-wing ideology, and pay no attention to all this set of facts here that would also lead a fair-minded, an open-minded individual to conclude maybe he was a part of or infiltrated by right-wing ideology. There's no doubt what Jimmy Kimmel said there was 100% true. Now, you might quibble with the idea that he's suggesting it's bad that they were trying to score political points, but that's what political actors do. That's what commentators do. That's what politicians do. Something happens in the news, they try to make themselves look good and their enemies look bad. It is simply indisputable that all sorts of people across the political spectrum are doing that. I want to spend a little time right now delving deeper into the basic facts of this situation and do it in a fair way. And if I say anything to offend you, grow up. If you hear me say something that hurts your feelings, then call Google and get my $16 million annual salary canceled and my show canceled. Oh, that's right. Google's not paying me $16 million. So I guess you're out of luck. So let's all, put our big boy pants on and simply listen to objective facts in an objective way without instantly saying, I have to use this crisis to make myself look good and people I don't like for other reasons make them look bad. Let's put that aside for a moment, shall we? Okay. I told you I'm going to be fair, and I am going to be fair. You might not agree with my assessment of every fact, but I'm going to marshal facts to make everybody's case. I'm going to make the case that Charlie Kirk's assassin was heavily influenced by left-wing ideology. I'm also going to make the case that Charlie Kirk's assassin was heavily influenced by right-wing ideology and right-wing culture. And I'm also going to make a third case, which is that Charlie Kirk his assassin was very much a product of something that isn't particularly ideological, but goes to some deeper rot in our society. Okay, let's first take a look at all the things that if you're convinced Charlie Kirk's assassin was influenced and a part of some left-wing cabal, some left-wing ideology, I'm going to honestly and fairly put out the facts in your favor to make you come to that conclusion. So he made comments to the effect that Charlie Kirk spread too much hate. This is suggesting a motivation for his heinous act. And again, to be clear, I think it was a heinous act. And you could certainly say, well, if he's right-wing or conservative, he wouldn't have that viewpoint. So clearly, let's chalk one up for that is left-wing ideology, although you could certainly be liberal, a mainstream, a centrist, and find Charlie Kirk's ideology wildly offensive. But for the sake of argument, let's say, okay, that's one in favor of the idea that Charlie Kirk's assassinated was motivated by the left, by left-wing ideology. Next, one of the bullet casings had words that are related to being anti-fascist. Well, that is a part of left-wing ideology, although a lot of centrists don't like fascism either, and a lot of old-style Republicans don't like fascism. But clearly, putting some inscription on a bullet casing about being anti-fascist, that's another clear-cut point, if we're keeping score, that would suggest that Charlie Kirk's assassin was influenced by left-wing ideology. Next point, and apologies if this offends anyone or doesn't seem exactly as you see the world, but I'm trying to give a fair-minded analysis. He was in a relationship with a transgender woman or a man who was in the process of transitioning into becoming a female. This is something that I don't have any evidence that that's less likely to happen among conservatives or MAGA people, but as far as on paper, what they stand for, that is not considered something the typical MAGA supporter would endorse. They're in favor of traditional family values, traditional male-female role models. So you could make a case that the assassin was influenced by a left, positive, pro-trans ideology philosophy. You could certainly make that case. To be clear, the partner in question has been cooperating completely with the authorities and by all indications knew nothing about this, did not endorse this. It wasn't like the partner was egging the assassin on to do this. They seemed genuinely horrified that this happened. But if we're keeping track, okay, 3 clear-cut points that would position the assassin's mindset as being part of left-wing ideology. Now, for those of you who are centrist, moderates, Democrats, liberals on the left, bear with me. I'm going to be giving both sides in a moment. Next item, the assassin, alleged assassin, was reportedly engaged in with some progressive online spaces where anti-Kirk sentiment was strong. So if you're keeping track, that's 4 specific fact points, data points suggesting this assassin was influenced by and a part of the left, or at least a non-right ideology. Several social acquaintances described him as mocking MAGA people and rolling his eyes when right-wing commentary came about. Okay, number 5. Number 6, he posted memes of that were critical of conservatives on social media from time to time. So that's 6 elements. There are some indications that he consumed some liberal-leaning podcasts and YouTube channels. That's 7. And once he apparently wrote an essay in college praising diversity and inclusion efforts. Okay, so those are, let me get my numbers here. Those are 8 specific facts, data points that could make a reasonable person conclude that he was influenced by left-wing ideology. And Jen writes in, left ideology was the reason why they don't agree. Left propaganda is what got him killed. Okay, Jen, so bear with me. Jen, you're watching this live, and I think in a fair way, objectively laid out 8 different facts that could make someone conclude this killer was in fact a part of a left-wing mindset, a left-wing culture, and at least a non-MAGA, a non-conservative mindset. Jen, if I missed some, feel free to list them here right in the comments section. But I think I was pretty thorough, did my research, and was fair. I'm coming to you not as some partisan, but as someone who's really trying to analyze communication skills clearly and thoroughly. Okay, now let's look at the other side, because yes, folks, there is more than one side. There's even more than 2 sides in most serious, contentious political issues in America and elsewhere. Now, what are the factors that would make a fair-minded individual, someone who's not a complete partisan hack, come to the conclusion that this Charlie Kirk assassin was maybe heavily influenced by right-wing culture and MAGA culture? Okay, let's again look at the facts. He knew how to use a gun and owned one. Okay, gun culture is overwhelmingly associated with right-wing culture, MAGA culture. In fact, most liberals I know, people on the left, like, ooh, guns, yuck, not in my house. I don't want to own a gun. That's the predominant idiot. And let's not forget, what's the number one thing most conservatives say they hate the most about liberals and the left and Democrats? It's that They want to take my gun away. That's the thing they hate. So that's the fact that he owned a gun, the fact that he knew how to even put a bullet in it and shoot it would not have happened. You could make the case that it wouldn't have happened if he had not been a part of a conservative, MAGA-loving culture. His father owned guns. His father was a police officer. He grew up in a culture that revered guns. So again, a fair-minded person would have to say, okay, that's one in favor of the liberal left-wing view that this guy would not have committed this atrocity without being shaped by a conservative MAGA view. And it's 1 point. So far, there's 8 positive facts to suggest the conservative analysis, which is this guy was affected by left-wing ideology. I only have 1 so far that's on the other side that supports essentially Jimmy Kimmel's analysis. So that's 1. He wore a pro-Trump Halloween costume several years ago. Again, it was a pro-Trump Halloween costume. So that's 2. 2 facts. Number 3, his own grandmother told the media that the entire family was a bunch of Trump-loving Republicans. This is his own family members. Now, one of the things we're hearing from Republicans and conservatives for my entire life is the importance of family creating culture. And supposedly that's what's so awful about liberals is they don't care about families and whether daddies stay around. It's families that create culture. Families create culture. Okay, this guy had a family where everyone was a Trump-loving Republican. This is the culture he grew up in every day of his life for 2 decades. So if in fact culture spreads ideology, which conservatives always tell us is the case, then you have to put that as a factor in as well. And Jen's giving some comments. I will address all of your comments in just a moment. Next item. He was enrolled in a very conservative university where pretty much everyone was a part of a conservative Mormon / however you want to view it, Mormon / Christian religion. He was not a part of Oberlin or some elite liberal university, Bard University, Williams, Columbia. He was in a culture surrounded by like-minded people. Not everyone, not every student was a Trump MAGA supporter, but overwhelmingly the culture he was in at his university, where he did attend briefly, was very pro-conservative, pro-MAGA. Next thing, he lived in a very conservative, pro-MAGA town. His whole town basically voted overwhelmingly for Trump. And again, he said, well, TJ, why are you bringing it up? That's not relevant. If someone was a killer who grew up in New York City in an extraordinarily liberal left-wing enclave, then wouldn't that be considered fodder for the argument of, oh, this person was influenced by radical left-wingers. Look at his town. Look at his neighborhood. Look at all these people supported left-wing radicals. You would use that as an argument to make one case. It has to be considered fair game. In this case, he was in a town where pretty much most people, not everyone, most people, the culture he was marinated in, everything was pro-MAGA, pro-Trump. Next thing, he was in a state. His whole state was a part of a pro-MAGA, pro-Republican, pro-Trump culture. These are the messages he's hearing all day long from his local media, his state media, from elected officials. You can't just say none of that has any impact. I'm not saying it made the definitive impact, but that was a part of what made him who he is. Next thing, he was a part of a particular religious faith, Mormonism, that is historically aligned with very conservative politics. The Mormon Church and its leaders, by and large, even if they don't officially do it, all Trump supporting, Republican supporting, conservative policy supporting. In fact, there was a time if you were a Mormon and you said, I endorse the Equal Rights Amendment, you were excommunicated from the church. And before the mid-1970s, if you were a Mormon and you said, I think Black people have souls, that was considered crazy because the Mormon church did not consider Black people to have souls, and are certainly not equal to white people as human beings. Now, they changed that before this guy was born, but I just want to give you a little sense of the culture he was in. He was brought up a Mormon. He was involved in Mormon activity. That was the culture he was a part of. Again, if someone grew up in a culture of radical Islam or Louis Farrakhan version of Islam that said white people are all devils, let's go out and kill white people, and then somebody did, you would say this religious upbringing was a part of what shaped the person, wouldn't you? Okay, next. Certain friends recalled him attending conservative campus events. So that would make you think, okay, maybe that shaped it, attending conservative events. A bullet casing had the following phrasing. If you can read this, you are gay. That seems to be an anti-gay slur. I don't know gay people who say things like that around non-gay people, at least. So that would suggest making fun of gay people, which is a part of conservative, let's be honest now, that's a part of conservative culture. Until not that long ago, conservatives thought it was an absolute abomination, and many still do, that being gay was an abomination. They opposed gay marriage. So for him to put on the casing, if you could see this, you're gay, seems to be something consistent with someone on the political right. Now, again, I'm being fair. I already pointed out to you earlier that he did, in fact, have anti-fascist writings on the bullets. This is what's being reported to us through law officials. So who knows if that actually stays. But that's all we know right now for those of us who follow objective media reports on this. Next. Neighbors described his family flying Trump flags outside their home during the election season. That's a part of his culture. The home where he lived was flying Trump flags. If I told you, here's a guy who killed a prominent conservative, and in the house where he lived, they were flying flags promoting Che Guevara and Fidel Castro and Stalin, I think you would logically conclude there's something about the culture this guy grew up in who made him want to do these horrible things. You can't have it both ways. I'm being fair here. Okay. Finally, social media history included him liking pro-Trump pages before later deleting them. Again, that's a part of his culture. So if you're adding it up, there are 8 facts that I saw that could make the case that he is very much a part of the political left, heavily influenced by the political left. There are 12 facts I just outlined for you that would make a clear-cut case that he was heavily influenced by the political right and the MAGA. Am I saying it's purely a numbers game? No. In fact, I'm saying there's more to it than that. But let's look at some of the comments. I want to be fair. Okay. So Jen says, is rhetoric like this, MAGA wants to hurt you, especially if you're a person of color, part of the LGBTQIA community. Okay. So I did point that out. The costume was him riding Trump, not people. I've read stories about this costume, and you could, in fairness to you, you could interpret it both ways. But one interpretation is that people got this Trump Halloween costume to honor him. One mother versus the rest of the family statements. I would question if his grandmother knew anything. We tend not to burden our elders with conflicts. Okay, but are you saying everyone else in the family said, oh, we're a big left-wing family? We were out busy campaigning for Mamdani that day. No, I have seen no reputable news reports suggesting that everyone else in the family says grandma's crazy and we're all liberal Democrats in this house. Again, it would be odd for any white family to, and that's a part I didn't even get to, race. It'd be odd for any white extended family in this part of Utah to not be Republican and MAGA supporting. Something I didn't even get to is the guy is a young white male. And that's the demographic that did better this election for Trump and MAGA than any other demographic. Trump is totally dominating support among young white men. So just demographically, certainly if the killer had been a 60-year-old Black woman, I think that many on the right would make a lot out of that fact, that she would be ipso facto automatically considered to be a part of the left. I'm not saying that's true, but that is how our conversation would go. And the fact that he is a white man who looks exactly like the demo of the podcast listenership of the right-wing blogosphere or the podcast sphere, I didn't even count that as one of the issues. So, Jan, I don't think you're being fair. You're right, Grandma could be wrong, but there's been no evidence of other family members saying, oh, no, she's way off. We were all a bunch of liberal Democrats. Final thoughts. Kimmel made an appropriate joke that made one side upset for a dying network that can't afford it. Two-shooter made pro-Antifa references. Well, you say it's a dying network. We're going to talk about that later in the show today because networks are having, but that's not why he was suspended. The fact that his show wasn't as profitable. So let's not mix issues. Let's not be cute. And I don't know if you meant an inappropriate joke. I don't think it was, when I look at every single word, I can't figure out what he actually said that was insensitive, or for that matter, even factually incorrect. You could make a judgment call. He could have also said, the left is trying to make hay out of this and make it seem like he's not one of us. But the fact that he said accurately that those on the right were trying to make it look like the killer was not a part of it is 100% true. You can debate whether or not they have facts for them, but I'm doing that right now. And I would contend I've done this more thoroughly than anything you've seen on any cable TV news program, network news program, because we've now been talking about it for 33 minutes. And I have taken the time to fairly accurately weigh all of the elements that could make a case for this Kirk assassin to be seen as influenced by hard right or hard left ideology. Okay, now I want to suggest a third option. There are simply plenty of facts out there to suggest that ideology had nothing to do with this. Let's look at more of the facts. This guy was a young male, a demographic disproportionately represented in mass shootings. You simply don't see a lot of 80-year-old Black women or white women or Asian women running around assassinating people or killing people or doing mass murder. You don't. You see mostly young white men. And when they're not young, they're typically white men. Let's not kid ourselves. It is one area where white men truly seem to excel is senseless violence with guns. He was unemployed and financially struggling. Maybe that had a bigger impact on him deciding to take another life than some left-wing ideology, right-wing ideology. He failed at school. He had been a gifted student in high school, had a 4.0 average, got in, had a partial merit scholarship to college. And then for whatever reason, things just washed out for him that first semester. And he really drifted. He spent many, many, many hours in isolation. He had few close friends, according to most reports. Isn't that something that is potentially a lot more influential in the way his life turned than whether he was left-wing or right-wing influenced? He was a heavy consumer of video games. This echoes the profiles of a lot of other isolated, young, troubled men who either take their own lives or who take other people's lives. He clearly displayed a sense of aimlessness and a lack of direction. Isn't that potentially the bigger issue than whether he was influenced by left-wing ideology, right-wing ideology? He exhibited social awkwardness with peers who described him as withdrawn. All of these things suggest a troubled youth and troubles that affect a tremendous proportion of our society of not just young men, but men in general. Men are about 3 times as likely to have a death of despair, meaning they kill themselves or they overdose on opioids or something. To me, he seems a lot more influenced by that culture of just being a lost boy. So what is the answer here? Was this Charlie Kirk assassin primarily influenced, and did he commit this atrocity because of influence of left-wing ideology, or was it right-wing ideology, or was it nothing to do with ideology, but other social afflictions that are affecting him and a lot of other young men too? I'm going to let you decide. I tried to give this in as fair and as accurate a way as possible. If you think I missed a fact, feel free to add it, but do not tell me that I am just spinning things here and giving you some nonsense. I'm giving you fair, objective analysis because I happen to believe if you want to be an intelligent person who's successful, you have to learn how to look at the world in a clear way. You cannot simply look at everything through confirmation bias. Oh, here's something bad that happened. I'm instantly going to blame somebody I don't like, and I can say it's just because they're bad people. That's what we see too often in our modern culture, not only on this issue, but on many other issues. And it's tiresome, it's tedious, and it's not the way for a society or a democracy to be successful. And it's certainly not a way for you to be successful either. More in a moment. Filtered is brought to you by the following. You don't need a new degree. You don't need another expensive coach. You need the right communication habits, and I'll teach them to you in just a few minutes a day. At MediaTrainingWorldwide.com, I've created the most comprehensive library of online communication and personal development courses anywhere. You'll learn public speaking, media training, persuasion, executive presence, and more. These are the same methods I've taught to world leaders, but now they're affordable and accessible to everyone. You can start for free and upgrade anytime. Go now to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill and it's trainable. Most people can't afford a full-time coach, and even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question, get feedback on your elevator pitch, rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it. Want to become a better speaker, leader, or communicator? Start with the TJ Walker Success Library. It's 5 of my most practical books covering everything from public speaking to media interviews and persuasive messaging, all for only $9.95. I've trained presidents and Fortune 500 CEOs, and now you can get the same wisdom in a fast, affordable format. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download your copies instantly. Welcome back to Filtered. I'm your host, TJ Walker. If you're new to the show, welcome. On this show, we do things a little differently here. We look at the top, typically 5 business stories of the day, technology stories and culture stories, and then analyze these stories through the lens, through the filter of communication and personal development skills. I do that because that's what I've devoted my life to. I have more than 12 million online student enrollments in my communication skills and personal development courses. And I personally train presidents of countries, prime ministers, professional athletes, billionaire owners of sports teams, and people in every sphere of life on how to communicate effectively. So that's what I'm trying to do, is bring you kind of on the inside to see how are these people communicating and what lessons are there for you. My promise to you, my pledge to you, if you spend a little time with me every day, you'll not only know a little more about the news, but you'll learn more about how you can successfully communicate and navigate your way through your career as well as your personal life. Issue 2, conservative backlash to free speech crackdowns. The aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination has split conservatives on the issue of free speech. Many are demanding consequences for those critical of Kirk, while others warn about government overreach. Tucker Carlson told listeners, "You hope that a year from now, the turmoil we're seeing in the aftermath of this murder won't be leveraged to bring hate speech laws to this country. If that does happen, there is never a more justified moment for civil disobedience than that, ever." Prominent conservative Ben Shapiro added, "While I was no fan of Jimmy Kimmel, I don't like the idea of the FCC threatening broadcasters over content." Why? Because one day the shoe will be on the other foot. If a Democratic president went after Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity, conservatives would properly call that massive regulatory overreach. And Senator Ted Cruz compared FCC pressure to mob tactics, saying, "That's right out of Goodfellas. That's right out of mafioso coming into a bar going, 'Nice bar you have here. Be ashamed if something happened to it.'" The debate has exposed a real tension inside the conservative movement. Protect Kirk's legacy at all cost, or preserve the principle of free speech. Okay, what's the real message here? I applaud conservatives like Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro and even Ted Cruz for having the tiniest little bit of a backbone and intellectual consistency. They are rightly saying the idea that you're going to put Jimmy Kimmel out of business for saying something that might hurt somebody's feelings is completely against the principle of free speech in America, and it should be appalled. Let's go a little bit deeper. What does this really mean? What's the deeper message here? Look, I understand in the heat of the moment and the passions of the moment, as a terrible activity like this can do, people say and do crazy things. It is time to reflect. It is time to calm down and realize just because something you don't like happens or is said doesn't mean there's a big government solution to it. Now, conservatives, to their credit, have been telling us this for years and years and years and years. So it's a bit ironic to hear them, as they have in the last week or so, say, "Oops, this city councilman or this woman who worked at FedEx said something critical of somebody we like." It's not that they called for violence. It's not that they applauded death, but they said something they criticized somebody we like. Therefore, we want to use the power of government to fire them, to have them eliminated. And we want to form lynch mobs to essentially force them to get fired. That's bizarre. That's anti-American. That's anti-free speech. That's anti the Constitution. And you can call it woke. There's certainly a case to be made that there's a huge problem of right-wing wokeism in America today. And as much as you didn't like a college professor being fired a couple of years ago for not using the right pronoun, you can't very well turn around and say, but it's fine to fire a comedian because they hurt my feelings, because they said a joke that I didn't agree with 100%, which, fact check, nobody should ever agree 100% with the facts any comedian presents. They're supposed to exaggerate for comedic effect. So I'm glad, and I do want to praise Ted Cruz, Tucker Carlson, and Ben Shapiro for having at least a tiny shred of intellectual honesty and pointing out that you might not like Jimmy Kimmel, but this idea that the government is going to decide what comedians can make what jokes is a little bit, is not a little bit too much. It's way, way, way too much. So we'll see how if this backlash continues. If you are troubled by ABC doing this, speak out. I don't think ABC is the real villain here, frankly, because imagine you are the head of ABC. You're Bob Iger. You're in this impossible situation. You've got somebody, head of the FCC, who controls your broadcasting licenses, who can say, oh, we're taking them away, you're off the air. If that happens, you're out of business. You can't sell advertising if you can't get on the air. So you have to fire all your employees, and you have to tell all your stockholders, hey, not only is the stock price not going up, but it's going to go way, way, way down, maybe to nothing. So that's a pretty ugly situation that no CEO wants to put themselves in. So is he going to go down in history and profiles and courage? No. But the real bad guy here, it isn't even Brendan Carr, the head of the FCC. This all stems from the top. It's all flowing from the top. Who is the boss of the SEC? That is where the rot is starting. And that's where it needs to be addressed. I'm TJ Walker. I really appreciate you watching today. This is I wouldn't say a special Saturday edition, because I'm here with you every Saturday. There's nothing else I'd rather be doing. I love spending time with you, whether you're here with me on TikTok today, and I love seeing all the continual red hearts flowing there, whether you're with me on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, Twitch. So happy that you're with us live. If you're listening to this on demand, on Spotify, on iTunes, on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, thank you for listening. And please take a moment to leave a review, subscribe, follow if you haven't done that yet. More in a moment after a few commercial words. Want a shortcut to powerful communication skills? Download the TJ Walker Success Library, 5 of my best-selling books for only $9.95. Go to tjwalker.com/books. Instant access, big impact. I've had entire YouTube channels wiped out overnight, so if you enjoy this show, don't lose track of me. The safest way is my newsletter, substack.com/@TJWalkerSuccess. Sign up for free and you'll get exclusive commentary, live session alerts, and first access to new tools. Again, that's substack.com. Just search for TJ Walker or go to substack.com/@TJWalkerSuccess. Your direct line to everything I do. Welcome back to Filtered. Finally, we can get away from politics and talk about other issues. Again, if you're new to this show, this is not primarily a political punditry show. We're here looking at business news, technology, economic news, culture news, filtering it through the lens of communication skills. That leads us to this next story. Murals or marketing? New York's walls spark debate. In Williamsburg, which is a part of Brooklyn, and across New York City, massive hand-painted murals are turning brick walls into advertisements. Companies like Colossal Media lease walls and deploy trained painters to create photorealistic ads for brands like Gucci and Haagen-Dazs. Supporters say it keeps alive a craft tradition while providing artists with steady jobs, benefits, and even 401k plans. Detractors argue it's nothing more than visual pollution that displaces true street art. The market is booming. Outdoor advertising revenues hit a record $9.1 billion in 2024. And as real estate prices rise, landlords see murals as another revenue stream. For now, New Yorkers are left to debate whether these works beautify the city or simply sell it off. Okay, so what's the real message here? In places like New York, they are painting the sides of walls with beautiful paintings that are also advertisements. Guess what? Grow up. All artists have done that. Michelangelo did commissioned works. If it's a way for you to make money as an artist and your own creativity can flow as well, I view that as a win-win. I hope you do too. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. I love spending time in Brooklyn. I used to live in Brooklyn. Another place that has a lot of this is the Wynwood section of Miami, which is not that far away from where I live now, and I do venture there from time to time. To me, it's just so much more interesting than a plain brick wall or a plain glass wall. For people to get upset about this makes me think, wow, there's so many problems in the world. There's so much death, destruction, evisceration of basic civil rights in America, and this is what you get upset about? Artwork? Artists getting paid? Because this is not just a digital image that is enlarged and spray painted on plastic, and then someone just comes and peels the plastic off and puts it on a wall. No, these are actual artists, sometimes graffiti artists, former graffiti artists, who want to figure out how to pay rent. So they're now painting, making a living, and they are creating works of beauty. Does it glamorize things like, liquor that maybe people don't need to drink more of? Yeah, I'm not saying it's 100% positive, but if you're going to have advertisements, and you are in a world where there is freedom of speech and capitalism, why not make the ads beautiful? Now, I was shocked to see that this company, Colossal Media, that kind of started this whole craze and specialized in it, they're able to lease prime walls with these paintings for $30,000 a month. I mean, this is a real business here. Again, the whole out-of-home ad revenue, the billboard industry, hit $9.1 billion in 2024. Gucci, Louis Vuitton, other long-term clients of this one company. But there are those who say this is just visual pollution. Okay, I mean, I get it. I certainly know that there are many people who hate billboards on highways. They want to be able to drive and see nothing but trees. But you know what? It's kind of nice to know, is there a restaurant you can pull over to with your family that isn't just McDonald's? I might not know without the billboard sometimes. So I'm not one of those who is absolutist that we got to get rid of all billboards and ads. We're going to have communication. That's the nature of capitalism. That is the nature of not just democracy. There's a lot of ads in China last time I went there. It is a function of any kind of market system. You have to be able to advertise. And if here people are looking for new ways of doing it, creative ways of doing it, different ways, then I say power to them. Can it be overdone? Can it be excessive? Sure. My other real message here for you is, so often it's tempting to say, well, I can't be an artist. I don't want to be the classic starving artist. So I have to go to medical school or law school or engineering school to please my parents and to ever make any money. It's just not true. If you're creative and you're constantly looking at, here's a skill set I have, and here's a new way of doing it in a way that perhaps hasn't been done before, you can make money. You can, in fact, not always, but you can. So here are a lot of artists making a living, paying their bills, honing their craft, and thank goodness that they didn't take a lot of parental advice saying, don't become an artist, become an engineer. Because a lot of these engineers now coming right out of school aren't getting any jobs because good old AI is taking the jobs from them. Imagine having a communication coach who never sleeps. Meet your new secret weapon, the TJ Walker AI clone. Go to tjwalker.ai and start getting custom coaching 24/7. No scheduling, no hourly fees. Sunlight's hidden benefits. For decades, health advice emphasized sun avoidance to reduce skin cancer risk. But new research suggests that moderate sun exposure provides broad health benefits. Studies show it can lower blood pressure, strengthen the immune system, reduce the risk of multiple sclerosis, even, and improve mental health. Researchers also note that bright light helps regulate circadian rhythms, aiding sleep and reducing depression. Dermatologist Richard Weller summarized it this way. The big picture is that the benefits of sunlight outweigh the risk provided you don't get sunburned. The message is shifting. Don't avoid the sun entirely. Be smart. So what's the real message here? Stop avoiding the sun at all cost. Some sunlight every day can benefit you massively. It can help you sleep better, and it can ward off depression, sometimes faster and easier than taking another pill or another drink. Let's dig a little bit deeper here. There was a study in the United Kingdom, this is in 2024, that showed a 12 to 15% lower mortality rate with sun exposure. A Swedish study showed that sun seekers live longer, half the risk of death. This is according to the Lindqvist Karolinska Institute. As I mentioned in the news read, sun exposure is linked to lower rates of MS, diabetes, and some cancer. Doesn't mean it's causation, but there is correlation there. So there are a lot of benefits. It produces nitric oxide, which is so beneficial, lowers blood pressure. I just think a lot of people say, oh, the sun's bad, I'm going to stay in today. Well, what do you do when you're staying inside quite often? It's sitting, which isn't healthy, staring at a screen, which isn't healthy, staring at a screen, getting angry about, oh, here's someone you don't like, did something you don't like, getting angry, and then rage tweeting, which is what a lot of people do. Here's what I think you and I need to both understand a little more, is if you're feeling a little bit down, you're going to be bombarded with so many ads today for this drug. Ask your doctor about this. Ask your doctor about this mood enhancer. Get this new potion, this pill, this take a gummy. All these things we can take to make us feel good, when maybe all you need is a walk outside in the morning, getting some direct sunlight. Now, if you have severe clinical depression, I'm not telling you disregard advice from your doctor or your psychiatrist or go off your bed. That's not the advice I'm giving you. What I am telling you is all human beings occasionally are feeling a little gloomy, down in the dumps. And there's a lot of research showing just going outside, some moderate exercise, like walking for 15 minutes, does so much to enhance your mood. In many aspects, or in some cases, more so than therapy, more so than mood-enhancing drugs. There's so many drugs that people are on to alter depression. Not saying don't take them, but start off by getting more sunshine and getting a walk. Sure, put on sunscreen. I put on sunscreen every day, but I get sunshine every day. A little easier for me. I live in the sunshine state of Florida. There's a lot of sunshine. But here's the thing to think about. The sun doesn't have its own ad network. It doesn't have its own marketing department. You're not going to be bombarded with ads all day long saying, hey, get up from your desk, get up from your chair, walk outside and get 10 minutes of sun and walk around. There's no advertising campaign for that. There are advertising campaigns for Snoop Dogg's gummies. There are a lot of big pharmaceutical companies that will give you ads and bombard you with ads to talk to your doctor if you're feeling down, to take this new drug to boost your mood, when maybe what you need, or at least as a part of the mix, is getting a little more sunshine every day. And yes, by all means, see a dermatologist once a year and get checked for skin cancer, but don't simply avoid sun because you're thinking you're doing it for your health, because it's not necessarily healthier. Filtered is brought to you by the following. Get the deeper takes I don't post anywhere else. Subscribe now at substack.com/@TJWalkerSuccess and stay in the loop. For years, people have asked how they could get one-on-one coaching from me inexpensively. Well, now you can, anytime, anywhere with the TJ Walker AI clone. It's like having me in your pocket, ready to help you prep for a speech, polish a pitch, or calm your nerves before a big meeting. You talk to it, it responds like I would, based on my real-world coaching of thousands of leaders and communicators. Check it out at tjwalker.ai. It's not just smart, it's personal. Welcome back to Filtered. I'm TJ Walker. Issue 5, the death of broadcast and cable television. Jimmy Kimmel's suspension is more than a headline. It's a symptom of broadcast television's decline. Ad dollars have fled to streaming platforms and social apps. Traditional TV advertising fell 7% in 2024 to $36.4 billion, while digital ad spending topped $200 billion. Production costs remain massive, with network dramas still costing $3 to $5 million per episode. Cable television networks aren't faring much better. ESPN lost over 10 million subscribers in the past decade, and cable ad revenue has dropped more than 25% since 2015. Meanwhile, broadcast and cable divisions are increasingly small arms of sprawling conglomerates, Disney, Comcast, Paramount, where the TV business is no longer the crown jewel, and regulation adds new pressures. Where once the FCC set standards, today it threatens to shut down shows and networks. Streaming platforms, global and lightly regulated, face no such risks. The future is clear. Live news and sports may hold broadcast afloat, but entertainment programming is already migrated to streaming. Executives face a choice: adapt or preside over a dying model. Okay, what's the real message here? If you're young and ambitious and looking for a career, thinking, wow, I just want to work at that big TV network, that big cable network, get that big first journalism job or producing a hit comedy, you're barking up the wrong tree. Those days are over. Those industries are collapsing. You know what reporters are doing and anchors are doing over at CNN right now? Ooh, they're fretting, they're updating their resume, and they're trying to save every penny because they understand the end is near. So let's dig a little bit deeper here. It gives me no comfort to talk about the death of CNN, the death of news, the death of broadcast TV, but I think it's happening for many forces. Some of it completely nefarious forces with authoritarianism reigning, not just in the United States, but other countries. A part of it is just the way technology works. There's simply, I can tell you personally, I just got 2 new TVs this week, and the person installing them for me showed me how I could adjust the apps as I want. And I could move my YouTube app to be the first streaming app I see when I turn my TV on. Netflix is second, HBO is third, Amazon is fourth, Apple is fifth. Those are the ones I use. So I don't even see broadcast. I don't even see CNN. Now, I guess I can access CNN through my HBO app, but it's not something I look for. And that's bad news, because certainly in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, I had CNN on every day. They were able to monetize these eyeballs. They don't get to monetize them anymore. So where's the opportunity? The opportunity, frankly, is for you and for me doing what I'm doing right now. I'm not spending all my time calling my publicist saying, hey, did you get me on Anderson Cooper tonight? Hey, did you get me on the Today Show? I'm not spending my time trying to get on traditional media. I'm simply making new media. I'm making it right here on TikTok. I'm making it right here on YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and on every podcast platform. You can do it too. So I think there's a lot of downsides, certainly downsides to anyone in the industry or shareholders of companies that are in the news business and the entertainment business. It's going to be tough for them. But it's good news for you and me and others who don't have to contend with gatekeepers anymore. Our biggest gatekeeper is, can we be interesting? That's the challenge. Every TikToker faces, every YouTuber faces. If you can be interesting, you can reach an audience. Because even if the government said, hey, Google, we're not going to give you any defense contracts or any other big contracts unless you fire TJ Walker. They can say, well, we don't employ TJ Walker. Well, we want him off YouTube. Okay, we'll delete his channel. Even if that happens, I'm on 100 other outlets. They can't put me out of business. More important, they can't put you out of business. So if you're a young comedian, the goal shouldn't be to be the next Jimmy Kimmel, because I don't think there is going to be another Jimmy Kimmel. But there's going to be a million guys and women and people sharing their crap, sharing their jokes, sharing their entertainment, sharing their news analysis on social media, podcast, and other formats. So that is the good news there. Okay, let's shift gears to our final segment. This is the grab bag section of the show. This is where I look at some topics that didn't quite merit full attention, but I do want to talk about it. As I mentioned to you earlier in the week, President Trump filed a $15 billion defamation suit against the New York Times, implying or saying they were guilty of fake news, improper. They were doing all sorts of things. They're basically treasonous. It really all came down to, they criticize me and I don't like that. And since I run the government, I'm going to terrorize them and torture them. Thankfully, a judge looked at this and essentially laughed it out of the court yesterday. He said the complaint was too long, too digressive, and you didn't really say what the crime was here. You didn't really say what the New York Times did wrong. Pretty embarrassing and humiliating to the attorneys. And the New York Times said, well, correct ruling, judges. You recognize this was just a political stunt. Now, as I mentioned earlier this week when the suit was filed, this isn't about winning a lawsuit. This is about intimidation. And it's about sending a message to every other media organization in the world that isn't as rich and as powerful and as entrenched as the New York Times. You better think twice before criticizing us, because we can sue you out of business. It's still going to have an extraordinarily chilling effect. Final item in the grab bag. This administration in Washington has added a new $100,000 fee for a visa for skilled workers. This is to go along with the $1 million gold card. So if you are a company, let's say you're Microsoft, and you want to bring in an AI researcher from India, it's going to be a little easier to do that now. You're going to pay the government $100,000. Now, what critics say is this is blatantly unconstitutional, because it is. It's devastating to a lot of U.S. industries that do need foreign workers. And it's making our country look like a mobbed up section of Brooklyn from the 1970s. It's truly embarrassing. It's destroying the brand of America. This idea that every single thing in our culture is pay to play. It is really, for so many years when I was growing up, Americans like to mock the how corrupt these other South American countries, they're corrupt. Asian countries, everyone's got to be a bribe. Well, now what is this? We're putting into law that we have to be bribed to let talented people come to our country. This whole country was built on the prospect of opening up to other people, other interesting people, other talented people coming to this country and having a go at it. And maybe they're not always that successful, the first generation. Steve Jobs' dad was an owner of a restaurant, never became a billionaire, but he did have Steve Jobs. We're essentially saying we don't want people like that in America anymore. Unless you're already rich and successful or have won some sort of lottery, you don't get to come here. And it's shameful. It's disgraceful. Anyway, that concludes our show for today. Thank you so much. I would love to hear your comments. If you're listening to this on any podcast platform, thank you. Please leave a review. Please follow the show. Subscribe. There's no charge for it. Leave a review. It's very helpful. We're just rounding out our second full week of doing the show. If you would like to leave a comment, you can always go to my YouTube page. Just type in TJ Walker Success, or you can type in Filtered with TJ Walker. You'll find the page. And then you go to the tab that says Posts. You can post any question, any comment, any review right there. Thanks so much. And if you are watching on YouTube or any other social media platform, please like it there, leave comments there, follow us, sign up for notifications, and tell others. Thanks so much. Oh, there's one other comment that came in. And Jen, thank you again so much for showing up. Thanks. We're going to sign off for today. I'll see you again live.